So I had been wanting to do a video using Rice Krispie treats in a new way for so long because they're actually malleable and you can make them into different shapes, which means you can do just about anything. I also am pretty obsessed with cheesecake, as you guys may already know. So I decided to pair the two together. So because the flavor of Rice Krispie treats is marshmallows, I decided to lean into the chocolate cheesecake because it'll kind of bring together a s'mores flavor, which is a classic. I used a measuring cup, but you can also just go in there with your hands to press it down into the springform pan. Originally, for some reason, I thought you could bake Rice Krispie treats, and you can't. I wanted to do a classic baked cheesecake, so the first time I made this, I made the Rice Krispie crust, I poured in the cheesecake batter, I put it in the oven, and then disaster struck. So I ended up burning the original crust in the oven. So I realized that I had to go back to the drawing board, but it actually was easy to fix because I could just make a no-bake cheesecake. So cheesecake lovers may argue that the only real kind of cheesecake is a baked cheesecake, but you can yield similar results by making a no-bake cheesecake, and it is a little bit easier to do. So in a baked cheesecake, the eggs are going to stabilize it, whereas in a no-bake cheesecake, you have to use a different stabilizing agent. So a gelatin, or in my case, I use the chocolate and whipped cream. So in order to make the crust out of Rice Krispie treats, you have to make sure you're working quickly because they're only malleable when they're still warm. Those are really the only key things to remember for this recipe. Other than that, it's a pretty simple cheesecake. Just a lot more fun. Now, once you make the cheesecake and you cool it, you can stop there, but I decided to decorate it because I really wanted to go the extra mile. So if you're eating this by yourself, feel free to stop here. But because I was bringing this to a party, I decided to go the extra mile and decorate the top. I know this recipe is so sweet, I'm not telling you to eat it every day, but you know, for a treat, for a crispy treat, it was a winner. I'm not the best decorator, but I really tried to focus here and make sure I nailed it, because I only had one shot. Now, if you're concerned that your Rice Krispie will get too hard while you're cooling the cheesecake, once the cheesecake is set, pull it out and leave it on the counter for a few minutes, and your Rice Krispie treat should soften right up. And there you have it, snap, crackle, pop. Is that like trademarked?
I don't know.
So this video is actually my third video I ever made for Tasty. I made this pie for Tasty for the holiday season, and it was such a smash hit that I, to this day, still make it for my family during the holidays too. So one day I was thinking about cinnamon rolls, I was thinking about apple pie, and then I just figured, why not have both? ¿Por qué no dos? The visual you get once you bake this pie is insane, but let me tell you, the flavors are all still really classic. So I decided to make a classic apple pie and then utilize the cinnamon rolls for the apple pie crust. So I remember the testing process of this pie was pretty tricky, but the end result is so delicious, I promise. So the filling I used for this is pretty classic and simple. Of course, we added some sugar and cinnamon in there, and the cornstarch is there to help thicken up the filling. Don't skip it, because then you'll have a watery pie, and no one wants that. I prefer to use fresh apples in my apple pies, but feel free to switch up the filling if you like. You can cook down your apples, you can use macerated apples, anything you want. You do have to cut the cinnamon rolls in half because you want them to be small enough to form the beautiful swirly crust. My biggest piece of advice for this is to use a serrated knife, because that will just make your life so much easier. So to simplify this recipe, we ended up using canned cinnamon rolls because it just is so much easier and a quicker process to get the crust that you want. When I was originally testing this recipe, I wasn't sure whether I wanted to use pie dough or to just use cinnamon rolls. I decided to go with the cinnamon rolls because it really gave you that beautiful swirly visual. Because if a cinnamon roll apple pie doesn't have swirly cinnamon rolls, then is it really a cinnamon roll apple pie? Probably not. And one more big tip, do not forget to put the foil on top when you first bake the pie. This will ensure that the inside of the pie bakes fully before the outside crust burns. Don't skip it, don't skip it, don't skip it, don't skip it, don't skip it. No, you won't forget, I hope. Another reason I wanted to use the canned cinnamon rolls is because they all come with this delicious icing that everybody knows from their childhood. It just takes it to the next level. So the reason I love making this pie for my own Thanksgiving is because it is such a showstopper. Everyone is so impressed when you put it down on the table. It's so beautiful. They wonder what's inside. That feeling never goes away. And it's not only so pretty, it's also so delicious because you get cinnamon rolls and an apple pie in one. Kill two birds with one pie. It seems like a lot of my videos are taking familiar flavors and then revamping them with a new twist on a crust. And I think that's because the crust is a great outward visual representation of the recipe. It's not always what's on the inside that counts. I know. I know, I'm not that shallow, guys. It is what's on the inside that counts, but just for cinnamon roll apple pie, it's what is on the outside that counts. I hope you make this pie. It was a swirl. Cinnamon and spice and pie. I like pie. All right, just make it. So I know this recipe is a little weird, but bear with me here. The elements are all pretty classic. Banana bread is one of my all-time favorite foods, not even desserts, like foods. So it's one of my favorite things to recreate for tasty videos. I'm not even quite sure how this idea originally came to me. I just remember like looking at a banana and being like, oh my God, kind of looks like a corn dog. No, like what? And then I had the next idea that you could replace the cornbread crust with banana bread, and voila, you got banana bread on a stick. Now originally I was like, what do I call this? Banana dog, banana corn dog, but I just settled on banana bread on a stick because, I don't know, banana corn dog kind of sounds weird. So for this recipe, I knew it was super important to not only nail the flavor, but to make sure I nailed the shape and look of a corn dog. I wanted it to look exactly the same, but just a dessert version. So in order to get that straight edge on the banana to look like a hot dog, I cut off the ends, put a stick in the middle, and then saved the ends to put into the banana bread that I was gonna make for the batter coating. Also, it's a great way to not waste any food, although you could have just eaten the ends, I don't know. So there are a few tricky variables to this recipe. I had to make sure the bananas would stay on the sticks, especially while dipping and frying, because bananas are a little more fragile than like a hot dog would be. So I decided to freeze the bananas beforehand. Now make sure you work quickly because the bananas will thaw and then you'll have a mess. So I know frying bananas sounds a little weird, but you're really just frying these to cook the banana bread all the way through and then also get that nice golden brown coating that every corn dog should have. Getting the temperature and the timing right on frying was a little bit tricky because in some batches I didn't cook the banana bread quite all the way through, and in other batches I cooked it far too much and the banana ended up mushy in the center. So you're really going for that perfect temperature and time to cook the banana bread just through. So I know this recipe seems a little tricky, but I promise it's simple, and trust me, it's a crowd pleaser. So no corn dog is complete without ketchup and mustard, and no banana dog is complete without chocolate and caramel. So I added both options for dipping sauces. I mean, but you could really dip it in anything you want. I don't know. You could dip it in ketchup or mustard. Be kind of gross, but. I'm still so proud of this video. It was a crazy idea, but it came out exactly how I pictured it in my weird, crazy mind. Ria even tried these and she was a fan. And you know, they don't call her the dessert snob for nothing. Seeing something that you've created from start to finish being received well by our audience is one of the most gratifying feelings. I know it's just banana bread on a stick, but it brought happiness to people's lives, and I'm proud of it. I felt like I was able to bring happiness on a stick. So I made this recipe video at a time where cake rolls were kind of trendy. They were like the in thing to do. And I just wanted to play around with the flavors and create something that was delicious, but also new and interesting. So the process looks a little bit tricky when making a cake roll because there are a few components that you have to nail, but it's actually pretty simple when you break it down. So this cake batter calls for a lot of eggs. It's kind of like a sponge cake. Now you want to make sure you're beating your eggs before you go on to adding any other ingredients because we're going to incorporate some air into these eggs and it'll make for a fluffier cake. Then all the rest is pretty simple. You'll just dump in the rest of the ingredients and switch to a folding method just to make sure we're not over beating our cake batter. Also, just keep an eye when you're baking this cake because it's so much thinner, it cooks really fast. So be careful not to burn your cake. So now we get to some of the more important steps. Once your cake is baked, you need to lay a clean dish towel on your surface, sprinkle that with powdered sugar, and then right when you take it out of the oven, you're gonna flip your cake over onto that towel and quickly roll it up while the cake is still hot. Because this will ensure, once you cool it in that form, that it will keep its roll shape without cracking. A very important step. So work quickly while it's still hot. Don't burn yourselves. You probably won't, it's fine, but yeah. The powdered sugar is there to make sure your cake doesn't stick to your towel, so don't skip that part either. And don't use flour, because that's gross. So now your cake is cooling in its dish towel. I went on to make the filling, which is a simple kind of cheesecake frosting. It's one of my all-time favorites, so can't go wrong. So when you bring your cake back from the fridge, you're gonna unroll it, and it will still have like I don't know, go up, because it's like molded to the roundness. Oh man. So then you're just gonna lather all that cheesecake frosting onto the surface of the cake. You're gonna sprinkle on some strawberries, and then it should be pretty easy from here on out. You just roll the cake back up into its final form. This is like a shapeshifter, shapeshifter cake. I sprinkled my cake with some more powdered sugar just to make sure the outside looked nice. And you can also decorate it with some more like strawberries or maybe some whipped cream. Also, another important step for this cake, if you're gonna be serving it to people or you want it to look really beautiful, is to chop off the ends. Now, I know it might seem wasteful, but you're really gonna get the best visual of that swirl when you chop off the extra bits on the end. But you also get that tasty visual. You can just eat them as a snack too. I did. I don't know why I always do this. All of a sudden, it's like my signature.